How's it going, fellow chess players? My name is Lewis from Chess Made Simple, and today we'll take a look at the fishing pole trap. The fishing pole trap is a trap which can occur during the Berlin defense in response to the Ruy Lopez. First I'll show you like the main lines of this trap, and afterwards we'll go in all kinds of variations to get you fully prepared when using this trap. The fishing pole trap is a trap which can be used by a black. Okay, let's dive right into it. We're starting off with e4, e5. White is going to attack the e5 pawn with his knight, and black is going to defend it with its knight. And now white decides to play the Ruy Lopez by playing bishop to b5. In order to get into the Berlin defense, black is going to play knight to f6, starting off the Berlin defense. White is going to respond by castling, and now the fishing pole trap comes into play with knight to g4. Now, you have to keep in mind that in this position, white is actually positioned better. So if white doesn't fall for the trap, black lost two moves basically, because you could always move your knight back. But losing 2 moves in the opening is quite a big deal. So the engine gives white about 1 pawn and a half advantage here. So that's just something to keep in mind. You're not terribly losing, and there's lots of opportunities to equalize the position if white doesn't fall for the trap. But just keep in mind that if white plays perfectly, white will have a slight advantage over black here. So a very good move to play in this situation as a white player would obviously be g3, chasing away the knight, which is just a natural move, and which is also actually a good move. Now, instead of removing our knight, we're going to play a very strange move. We're actually going to defend the knight by playing h5. Very strange, alright? So now you're thinking, okay, we're losing this knight. This must be horrible for us. Oh well. So we're going to go and see what happens if white captures our knight. So white captures the knight, we recapture the pawn, and already at the moment when white captures our pawn, black has already quite a big advantage. So we're going to recapture here, and now one thing you will notice is that the h file has opened up and our rook has just direct access to white's king, which is obviously very powerful and very threatening. Not only that, our pawn is also attacking the knight on f3, so white has to make a decision. Is he gonna move his knight or not? He's obviously it's not he doesn't have to move his knight, but he's probably gonna want to move his knight because otherwise he's obviously gonna lose it, and he wants to protect it. Now you have to keep in mind there are not that many squares the white knight can go to. The main line consists of knight going to e1, so we'll take a look at that. But when white plays this move, it's already mate in 4. Perhaps you can already see it. If you don't, I'll show it to you. It's queen to h4. So as you can see, we're threatening mate on h1 or h2 with the queen. So there are only a couple of moves to get out of this. One of the possibilities would be playing pawn to f4, creating a fleeing square at f2 for the king, but that doesn't really help much because we're just gonna play g3, taking away the f2 flight square. Now the last way white can delay mate a little bit is by sacrificing his queen, which is just going to take that. Now there's not a single move white can do to escape checkmate. So for example, he plays h3, and then we checkmate on h1 or h2. You can choose whatever you prefer. So that's how the fishing pole trap works, the main line, and if everything goes according to plan. Now obviously there's all kinds of different variations, and we're going to take a look at a lot of the moves and what the options are for both black and white. But this is how the main line goes, but obviously not everyone is going to fall for it. But the moment white here plays knight to e1, you have to realize it's immediately checkmate in 4. There's nothing he can do to prevent it. But okay, let's take a look back and take a look here at the moment when white decides to castle. That's actually a really good move for white. It's a widely recognized opening move in the Ruy Lopez, so this is definitely not a blunder. Because you could be thinking, okay, isn't white here giving up his e4 pawn because it's not defended, right? So for example, one of the possibilities would be let's take the pawn and see what happens, right? But this is also the main line, but you have to realize that black doesn't win a pawn, because what easily will happen is white is just going to play rook to e1, attacking the knight. Now the knight has to move, obviously, and yeah, then the pawn will be attacked, and there's simply not a possibility to keep both of them at the same time. So now black has a couple of options. We're going to look at a couple of them. The first one we're going to look at is knight to d6 over here. So what we're seeing now is that the pawn is attacked twice, both by the knight and the rook, and it's only defended once by black's knight. Now you also have to keep in mind, by playing the knight to d6, now the bishop on b5 is also under attack and it isn't defended. Okay, so this line continues by white taking the pawn with his knight, and now black is going to have to recapture like this. In a couple of seconds, we'll look at the variation where black actually takes the bishop, but that is actually a huge blunder. But so the main line consists here of black retaking the knight. Then the rook is going to take the knight on check, and now black is simply going to play bishop to e7. And now the position is equal, so yeah. There's not really, both have developed some pieces. Black will be able to easily castle, and will just be able to develop both of the positions. So there's not really much happening here, right? Now, one of the things you have to look at is after the knight has captured on e5, wouldn't it be a good idea to take the bishop on b5? It isn't defended, so that must be a pretty great move, winning a piece. So let's take a look. We'll take this. This is actually a huge blunder. Perhaps you guys can already see it, what's going to happen, because here the winning move is knight takes c6. Genius move. Not only are we winning the knight there, our rook is offering a check, and at the same time we're attacking the queen, and there's no possibility here to save the queen. Black will lose his queen and lose the game, basically. That's how this goes. So that was when we play knight to d6. Now another option is to play here. So after rook went to e1, would be to play knight to f6, going back over there. So yeah, once again, white can take the pawn here. Black is going to play bishop to e7, and once again the position is equal, with a slight advantage to white here. But overall position is equal. There's not much happening here. Now another possibility you could think after rook went to e1. Okay, why can't we simply defend our knight and then save both our knight and pawn at the same time? So that should be a possibility, right? Perhaps with d5. That's not a great move. This will actually give some advantages to white here. So what white is going to respond with is d3, kicking away the knight with the pawn, and still attacking the pawn on e5 with his rook. Now once again, black has a couple of options which we're going to take a look at. The first option is knight takes at f2. This might sound kind of crazy, but actually one of the better moves black can do in this position here. This will result in a queen trade, but white will be up a piece for a pawn. So overall, still pretty bad for black. So as you can see, the knight is challenging the queen, but we're not going to do anything about it. We're just going to take on e5. Obviously, black is going to take our queen. Now we're going to take the knight, giving a check and threatening the queen. Black is going to block with bishop to e6. We're going to take the queen. The king is going to take the knight. Our rook is going to take the knight. Now black is going to kick away the bishop. The bishop moves back. Black develops a little bit more. We move out of the way. Rook comes to the e-file, and the knight gets developed. So this is like the position you get in at this point. Obviously, you could say black has a little bit of better position, but yeah, really, white is up a piece. So in the end, white should have an easy time winning this game. So another possibility after pawn to d3, kicking away the knight, would be moving the knight to c5 over there. But this will result in a trade and just black being up a piece. So as you can see, the knight on c6 has been pinned because you played the move to d5. So that creates a pin on the knight on c6. So now white is simply going to capture the pawn e5 with his knight. And he's in a little bit of trouble, so we're going to play e7 to prevent losing our queen, as you saw previously how that happened. But now white can simply capture the knight on c6 with a check. Black is going to take back, and now white is simply going to take on c6. Again, attacking both the bishop and the queen, so he's going to be able to trade that off once again. And then if black doesn't play anything at this move, then next turn white will be able to play knight to f5, winning the queen by a discovered check. So black has to do something, so he's going to move his knight to f8. Then we're going to capture the bishop on c8. Black is going to recapture. A lot of pieces have been traded off, which is obviously good if you're winning. And as you can see, white is up a pawn and a piece, so it's in a winning position here. Black also couldn't castle, so yeah, this should be very easy to win as the white player. So, so moving the knight to c5 is not a great move. Another possibility after d3 is moving the knight to f6 over there, just back to the space where it came from. But this is also another great possibility because the knight on c6 is pinned. So once again, white is going to come in, capture that e5 pawn. Black is again going to prevent his queen from being taken by the discovered check. So we're going to capture on c6. This time we do it with the knight though, very important. The queen is going to come in like that. Now we're going to retreat our knight, but still defending our bishop, and c6 is going to kick away the bishop. But before we do that, we're going to trade a bit. So we're going to take on e6. Now we have to take back because otherwise there's a discovered check here attacking the queen. So that's something you have to keep in mind. So therefore, black definitely has to recapture here, and then we just can move away our bishop. So if you take a look at the position, once again, white is up a piece and should once again have an easy game. So really, once d5 was played here, and then the knight gets kicked away, like one of the best lines is moving, is taking there on f2. Another possibility would be playing bishop to b4. It's one of the other possibilities, attacking the rook. But really, overall, just keep in mind that it's not very smart to play this move here. Playing d5 is going to get you in all kinds of trouble because of this pin here on your knight. So just don't do that and move away. Okay, so on to something else. Here, instead of so the knight has been played to g4. So now we're actually going to look at the trap, because previously we looked what happened when this pawn got taken, but we're here to look what happens when we play the trap, like the fishing pole trap. So knight to g4. We looked at g3, but obviously there's some other possibilities here. One of the possibilities would be rook to e1. A lot of people who play the Ruy Lopez are pretty accustomed to playing rook to e1. That's a pretty normal move to play in a normal variation. But when this knight is over here, that's actually a pretty dangerous move to play. Because what's going to happen, the bishop is going to come to c5, creating a double attack on the f2 square. And now white is in a little bit of trouble. So now a natural move, people who encounter like this kind of position, a natural move to play is playing d4, blocking away the bishop. But that's not a good way to deal with this situation, because as you can see, the pawn has been attacked 3 times, only defended 2 times. So we're simply going to capture that pawn with our knight. Black is going to recapture with his knight. And now our queen is going to come to h4, creating a double attack both on the h2 pawn and on the f2 pawn. Now, white basically have 2 possibilities. The first one I'm going to look at is knight to f3, defending the h2 pawn, but this is actually going to result in a mate in 3. And it's actually a really beautiful mate, so I definitely want to show this. So we're going to take with the queen on f2, having a check. The king has to move out of the way to h1. Now we're going to sacrifice our queen here by delivering a check on g1. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? Now it doesn't matter how you recapture the queen, it can either be by the rook or by the knight. In this example we'll look at the knight. We can simply deliver a beautiful smothered checkmate with knight to f2. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? I definitely think that is the case. So obviously that's not a good response to queen to g4. Another possibility would be, and that's actually the best way here to react, is bishop to e3. There we go. So now we're still going to take the knight, but we're going to do it with our pawn over there. Black is going to recapture with the bishop, and we're going to deliver, or we're actually going to take the f2 pawn as of right now, attacking the queen. Queen moves out of the way. We're going to take the bishop. The queen is going to take back on the bishop. And now we're going to play our knight to g4 once again, creating a beautiful double attack both on the h2 pawn and on the rook on e1, because the queen is no longer defending the rook. So now basically white has to defend his rook on e1, so he can do that by developing his knight to d2, but now we obviously can take on h2 with our queen. There we go, and now the king has to move out of the way. So black in this position is up a pawn and obviously has a much better position. I would much rather play black in this position. So yeah, white is definitely in some trouble, and once again black should have an easy time winning this game. So yeah, the only real good way to answer bishop to c5 here is playing rook to f1. Just going back. I know it sucks because you just came from this position, but you just have to move back. Now black is going to castle, and the position is pretty much equal. But yeah, all the other possibilities really weren't that great, so definitely don't go into those. So we're gonna take a look at some further positions. So h3 is being played, after which we play h5, and now we've looked at the possibility of white taking here, which is obviously a bad move. We've already discussed that, but we'll look at some other possibilities because obviously white isn't obligated to take here. One of the other possibilities would be the exchange variation in Ruy Lopez, basically bishop taking the knight on c6, and it will more or less lead to equal positions. Not exactly, but really that's kind of the case what's going to happen. So we're going to retake the bishop with our d pawn. Knight is going to play to c3, so just normal development moves. Bishop to c5 once again, creating some kind of double attack, but really it's not that dangerous because obviously it has been twice defended, but still it's a threat you have to look at. Then d3 is being played, opening up this file for the bishop, which is actually pretty crucial because if now we would take, it's actually not as devastating anymore. It's still not a good move to take as white, but if you now take as a white player, as you can see, you will be able to block off the queen by either playing bishop to g5 or playing the knight to g5. So that's already a possibility to get out of this trap if you would still fall into it at this point. So that's also a good reason to open up this line for your bishop, right? Okay, so then bishop to e6, simple development moves, knight to e2, queen to there, just simple development moves. Black is gonna castle long here, and now white is gonna start his queen side pawn rush, basically. So now we're gonna take on f2. We're gonna trade off 2 pieces for a rook and a pawn, so that's kind of an equal trade. And now the position slightly favors white, but overall positions are rather equal. So if you go into like the exchange variation here as white, that's a great possibility to equalize the position. And yeah, nothing really this is like it's white gets out of the trap, but really it's not that bad for black because I don't know, you can look at the position. Like, white is going to have an easy time here attacking the queen side with his pawns. Yeah, I don't know. It's difficult to analyze, and the computer also says positions are almost equal. So another position after h5 would be to play knight to c3, just a normal development move. This is actually a very good move for white, but it sets up another trap which black can utilize to like basically yeah, hurt white here in this position. So we're gonna respond with knight to d4, which kind of looks like a strange move. Like we're really invading black's territory here, and white is probably gonna want to capture it because it's also gonna create a double pawn. So we're gonna look at knight takes, and actually it's also the best move according to the computer here to take. So black is gonna take back, now attacking the knight, so the knight is gonna have to move away. Knight's gonna move to e2, now attacking the pawn on d4. And we're simply gonna play a6, chasing away the bishop. The bishop moves back to a4, and now we're gonna play knight to e5. Now, as you can see, the pawn on d4 is still under attack. It's looking very juicy. White is going to want to capture it, right? So white captures it, but this actually is a bad move. So if you're in this position as white player, you don't want to capture it. For example, play d3. It's a much better move. But let's just take at capturing that pawn because it just looks so juicy. Okay, so now black is gonna play c5, and some of you might already see the trick because at this moment we're really closing in on that bishop on h4. So now we're chasing away the knight. Oh, and now there's actually a couple of possibilities you have to look at. So white has two possibilities, basically moving knight to f3, moving it back to that square. Now we can simply take the knight with a check, and white can recapture with the queen. Now we're going to play b5, chasing away that bishop. The bishop is going to go to b3, c4, bishop takes, pawn takes, and now black is up a piece for a pawn. Or actually, no, for 2 pawns. Okay, yeah. Black is so basically white got 2 pawns for his piece, but still black is in a much better position when capturing that bishop. Now another possibility would be if white plays here, for example, e5, attacking the rook, but then simply rook to b8, bishop to b3, and c4 will still capture or enclose the bishop. Anyway, so the knight doesn't necessarily, so after c5, the knight doesn't necessarily have to go to f3. That's actually not the best move. The best move to play in this situation would be to play f4 as the white player. I just wanted to touch upon knight to f3 because that's like the natural move, right? But the best move is here to play f4, attacking black's knight again. So now we're going to play knight to g6, moving out of the way. As a white player, you keep on attacking, so we're going to move out of the way once again. And now white is going to do play knight to e2. We're going to still play b5 here, but white is going to respond. So he moved away his knight, so he could play pawn to d4 here, like that. Attacking our knight once again, we're going to move our knight out of the way to c6. Now bishop to b3. We're still going to play c4, closing in on that bishop. And once again, we capture the bishop, and knight to f4 can move. So black is up a piece for 2 pawns, but white has a better position, and overall now things are a little bit equal, you know. White is definitely in a better position, but black is up a piece, so I don't know. But that only happens if white plays here f4, and obviously the much more natural move, knight to f3, will be played a lot more than just simply f4. Okay, so now let's actually take a look what happens if white just plays the best move in this position, which would be pawn to c3. So that's the way how you want to react against this fishing pole trap. This is actually the best move you can play as a white player. So c3, now black is going to play a6, kicking away the bishop to a4. Now d6, opening up some development possibilities for our bishop here, and also defending the pawn on e5. Now black is going to respond with d4, and now here there's all kinds of shenanigans going on because we played pawn to d6. We obviously opened up this pin here on the knight, so that's something to keep in mind. Now by white playing this pawn to d4, if the pawn captures pawn on e5, pawn recaptures, then obviously the queen will be captured, removing basically castling from the black king. That's something you have to keep in mind, and you have to also realize that the black knight is pinned, so he can be recapturing. So that's basically the threat what we're having here. So in order to solve this threat, d6, bishop to d7 will be played. Now d5, kicking away the knight is a possibility. Knight's going to go to e7. So as you can see, white is building up a pretty strong center here, really attacking black from all sides. So bishop takes the bishop on d6. Queen is going to recapture, and now the queen is actually off of the this file here, and it will no longer. So if we now take white is off of this file and can no longer deliver the check. Actually taking here the knight is a pretty good move. So we're going to capture the knight. Black is going to recapture. Now the knight is going to go to h2, attacking the pawn twice, both with his knight and queen, and it's only defended once. So now black can play f5. We're going to capture on f5. Queen is going to capture back. Queen is going to capture the pawn there on g4. Queen to h7. Queen to h3. That's how this position is. White is up a piece and a pawn. So overall, this is a great continuation for white. And so if white plays a perfect move, it's going to actually have a pretty huge advantage. Okay, so there's two more variations I want to go over this. So this video has already been going on for quite a while here, but there's 2 more variations you guys have to see. So the position I want to take a look at here is what happens if we've both captured So let's go back a bit. So h5 is being played. Now we capture the knight, we recapture, but now white has some options, right? So he doesn't necessarily have to move his knight to e1 in the main line, like in the main line, because this obviously results in mate. So he obviously has some better moves. They're still not that great, but he has some better options. So for example, white could play c3, which is in this position is actually the best move white can play. It's still not great, but it's the best he can do. So once again, kicking away the bishop there. Bishop goes back, now playing d6. Now again, keep in mind there's a pin over here. And yeah, just opening up some development possibilities for black here. We're going to play g3, blocking the pawn from advancing there, which is actually a pretty crucial move. So now black is going to play queen to f6. Knight is going to go to h4 because now the pawn is on g3. White's knight is defended over there. So we're going to play g5, kicking it away the knight once again. Knight is going to go to g2, the only real possibility basically. Now we're going to play a queen to h6, still threatening mate. So the only way to prevent this is by playing knight back to g4. We're going to capture that. And now we're going to play d3, attacking the queen. Now the queen has to move, for example, to g6. So black is up a piece and a pawn, and he also has a very strong kingside attack. So black has a huge advantage in this position. But at least it's not checkmate, you know. So that's a possible continuation. Now another possibility after pawn took on g4 here would be to play knight to h2. That also seems like a reasonable move. But to be honest, it's still mate here, but it's a very difficult mate. You're probably not gonna spot, but it's a mate which cannot be avoided, and actually in 12 moves. It's pretty beautiful. I'm gonna show it to you. I wouldn't have noticed it myself. It was a computer who calculated this for me. I'll show it to you guys. It's pretty beautiful, but some of the moves are actually pretty straightforward, so you could actually fall into this. But anyhow, the value you're gonna get out of this position would just be tremendous, that you would win anyway. But obviously, the most important move here to play is still queen to h4, threatening the mate. But you probably could come up with this move yourself, right? So now, black is gonna want to create a fleeing square. Now, the only way to prevent mate long enough would be to play f4. Okay, so what we're going to play next is bishop to c5, delivering that check now because the pawn has moved away. So he's going to have to block that check. The only possibility is with pawn to d4. We're going to capture that with our knight over there. Now, bishop to e3, attacking the knight and like taking away some, like releasing some pressure of the situation, but really it doesn't matter that much because we're just gonna do knight to e2, delivering a check. Queen is gonna capture, and now we're gonna move up our pawn by 1, still threatening the checkmate with the queen capturing on h2. So something is gonna have to happen about that. The only possibility he can do something about that is sacrificing his queen on h5, but we're actually gonna capture on e3 with a check. The rook has to come in between. We're going to capture the queen over there. At the moment, we're not really threatening checkmate because the king can always flee over here. But still, he's definitely not in a great position, as you can see. So, king is fleeing. We're going to take the knight with our pawn. And now we're like threatening to promote here and create a queen. So, king to e2. We're going to capture the rook on f2, delivering a check. King moves to d3. We're going to promote on h1. So as you can see, we just have so much, like, there's no way white can recover from this. But I'm going to show you the rest of this variation. For example, knight to a3. There's really nothing white can do in this position. Bishop to c1, blocking off the knight, attacking our queen there. So yeah, white could, for example, capture that pawn. Now we're going to lever a check on the king. He has to move. Check once again. King moves one last time. We're going to capture over there. Oh no, he can actually move one more time. And now it's checkmate with queen on d4. Okay, so that was a fishing pole trap. All of the variations. I'll show you one more time the main line, just so you know. So e4, e5. The horses are going to attack and defend. starting the Ruy Lopez, and the Berlin defense. Now, very important, white has to actually castle here. And just don't get me wrong, like castling is really a good move in this situation. But keep in mind that the fishing pole attack in the Berlin defense can only work in the Berlin defense when white castles, basically. So now, knight to g4, opening up the fishing pole attack. Keep in mind, this move is not that great for black, but there's like if white falls for a trap, he's gonna be in so much trouble. Now it continues by chasing away the knight. We're gonna defend the knight with our pawn. White takes, black takes. Now his knight is attacked, so he's gonna move it out of the way, probably to e1. And now it's a maiden 4 with queen to h4, f4, playing pawn to g3. Sacrificing the queen on h5, playing a dumb move doesn't matter. He can play a single move to save his king at this moment. So for example a3, and then we're going to deliver a checkmate on h1, or you know h2 would also work. This would also be checkmate, right? And that's how the fishing pole attack in the Ruy Lopez attack Berlin defense works. I hope this video was informational to you guys. If you would like to see more traps in-depth explained by me, definitely subscribe to the channel. If you liked the video, drop a like. If you have any questions about moves I didn't cover, definitely leave them below in the comments. I'll take a look at them and see if I can provide a good answer to you guys back. So thanks for watching. Take care, fellow chess players, and I would love to see you again in a future chess video. See you later.